That's what I was thinking.
Yeah!
Like heavy metal. Too angry. Too angry. I don't like it.
You're going to win this round.
Oh, a library. Oh. You hate shoe shopping.
I hate shoe shopping. You hate peanut butter.
Yes, I hate peanut butter. Hate it.
Welcome, Courtney, to English Between with teacher Amy. Today is really special because Courtney is from the United States. So I have another native English speaker today, but also she's my sister. So my sister's here on my channel. And the reason I have Courtney here with me, my sister, is because I've been getting all of these questions about job interviews in the United States. And I actually did like a whole live lesson about what to do in an interview, how to prepare. And then when I was preparing for it, I suddenly realized, oh my gosh, my sister does this all the time. So why don't I just talk to her about it? So thank you, Courtney, for coming to talk about job interviewing.
You're welcome.
So first, let's get started with, so tell us a little bit about your job experience with hiring. So you kind of started taking over a lot of the hiring or being in charge of a lot of the hiring at your company, right? So tell me about where you work and what your experience is hiring people, please.
Great. My name is Courtney. It's so nice to meet all of you. Thank you for having me, Amy. I have been at my current company for 8 years, and in the past 3 years, I have started helping out with hiring in the account management and customer success departments of the organization. And so what that means, it started out with me when I was in a team lead position. I wasn't making the ultimate decisions as the hiring manager, but I was also interviewing candidates. And I was getting the opportunity to ask a lot of questions to understand what makes a candidate a good person that might be a good fit for a particular role. And I was able to make recommendations to the hiring manager on who I thought would be a good fit for the role. Now I actually am the hiring manager for those departments. And so I actually am the person that gets to make the final decision on whether we hire someone or not. And so instead of being one of the first or second people to interview someone, now I'm one of the last people to interview them. And so it's been a transition, but I've learned a lot about interviewing. I've hired some people and realized that I shouldn't have hired them and I should have asked more questions, or I should have asked certain questions. And so I've learned from those experiences and I've gotten much better. And the past few people I've hired have been really awesome. So I think I'm getting better at being able to determine if someone would be a good candidate or not through the interviewing process.
Nice. So I didn't realize you were actually, because I knew you were doing a lot of the hiring because I've heard you. Even like sometimes I go over to your house to work to get a little bit of quiet, for my kids. And I hear you on there, talking to people and hiring people. And so I knew you were doing a lot of hiring, but I didn't know that you were like technically the hiring manager now.
Yes, I'm the hiring manager for my departments. There are other hiring managers at WorkSmart too for other departments, but I get to have the final say in the account management and customer success department, which has been really nice. It gives me a lot of autonomy to make sure I build the right team with the right people.
Nice, perfect. So you said you've learned a lot of lessons. So how about we start with, what are some things that you really like to see in an interview? And I want to actually preface or say first that when we're talking about job interviews, we are specifically, of course, talking about job interviews in the US. So something sounds a little bit weird, then make note of it because maybe it's different in your country. And so it's important to notice those differences. So what are some things that you like to see when just kind of in your first impression of a person or when someone comes to you in an interview?
First things first, Be early, at least 5 minutes. Do not be late. Do not join the minute the meeting starts. That is definitely concerning. People who are late, very, very, very concerning to be late to an interview, even if it's by a minute. I always try to make sure that I log on early so that I can make sure if the person I'm interviewing is there on time. And if they're late, it just sets it off to a bad tone. So make it a priority, be there on time. Be really personable, be friendly. Don't be a monotone robot. Don't be so stiff and, oh my gosh, I have to answer all the questions perfectly. Be personable, be conversational. People want to hire people that they like to talk to, that they want to work with. They can envision having coffee with this person, going to lunch, seeing this person every day, having meetings with this person. They want to work with people that they like to talk to. So be personal, smile, be welcoming. Those things are really important. Thank the person for taking the time to interview you. That's really nice. And then try to be as prepared as possible. So do some research on the job itself. Make sure you have reread the job description, the responsibilities, so that it's fresh in your mind. Do a little bit of research on LinkedIn or on the internet to learn a little bit more about the company, any recent awards that they've won, learning about the company culture, like if they've recently had a party that looked fun, or if you've noticed that they love to volunteer with Habitat for Humanity, or whatever those things are, that show that you're really especially interested in the role and in the organization itself, are really good things.
Yeah, I mean, every company has a Facebook page now too, you know. I don't know, does your
Yes.
company's a little bit smaller, so
Yeah, Facebook page.
yeah. Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so everyone has a Facebook page and usually you can just get on it and see it. It takes just a few minutes, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah, that's great. And the other one of the other things that I mentioned, and it reminded me when you said it in my talk, was you were talking about reviewing the responsibilities of the job and stuff. And so we were talking about how, you know, at least so you correct me because you're the interview person, but how you can, you know, make sure you know the responsibilities and then also have some personal experience or story to go with each like responsibility that you see. So not only do you know them, but you specifically know why, you know, you can do it.
I think that's great, especially some of the bigger things. Like if they say, we're looking for this type of a person, you want to be able to explain why you are that type of a person and why you would be a good fit for the role. So if it's a customer service position, here's why I would be a good fit for that. And if it's a technical position, here's the experience that I have that's relevant. Being able to kind of speak to that really quickly is important. One of the other things that I really, really, really value in an interview is a person that asks me really good questions, especially questions about what the role will be like. What would this job be like? What would my day-to-day responsibilities look like? How many people would I be working with? In what ways would I be able to collaborate with those people? What would my job responsibilities be? What does success look like in this role? Those types of questions are really, really important to me. And they make me feel like the person really wants to understand what the job is like and are not just taking any job for, oh, as long as it offers me the right amount of money, then I'll just take this job. I want someone who really wants to understand what the job is going to be like and is really interested in the role. And so asking really good questions is really important. And I really value that with someone that I'm interviewing.
Okay, so is it okay then? You didn't mention, I don't think you mentioned, but is it okay for someone to ask like about the next steps from this position, like advancement and promotions and that kind of stuff in an interview?
Yes, definitely. It's definitely okay. I wouldn't make it your first question because, again, or your only question, because if your only question or your first question is, what's after this, or how can I advance? That makes the person you're interviewing feel like you're not actually interested in this position. You're just trying to figure out how you can get to the next one, or maybe the salary for this position isn't exactly what you want. So you're going to really quickly try to get into the next position. And while people and myself want people who want to grow professionally, we also, when we're interviewing for a position, we want somebody to stay in that position for at least a little while and be happy and content and feel like it's a good fit for them. So I would recommend that you ask a few other questions about what is the job like? How can I be successful? What are the most important things? Those types of questions first. And then at the end, what types of career opportunities or growth opportunities are available in this company? Is the company growing? What could I expect? What types of opportunities could I expect would be available to me if I were to be really successful in this role in 3 years and 5 years? That lets them know that you're interested in growing long term, but you're not interested in changing positions tomorrow. You're happy with this position and you're interested in it.
We
and you're
want to fill this position, please. So let's
exactly not the next position in the next position, but it's totally fine to ask that. It's also okay to ask questions about next steps. A lot of times people leave the interview and they're like, hey, I'm just sitting here. How long should I wait to reach out? And if they don't reach out to me in a couple of days, does that mean they're not interested in me? It's okay to say, okay, what would be the next steps for this interview if I were to make it to the next round? What are the next steps and when can I expect to hear from someone? That's totally fine. I actually like that question because it allows me to set good expectations. And sometimes we're looking to hire someone really quickly. We're planning to make a decision next week. We might set up another interview with you later in the week. And sometimes we're not looking to make a decision until early next month.
All right. So what are some things that you really do not like to see? So if someone does that thing, then that's just immediate red flag. A red flag meaning it's something that tells you this is probably not the right person.
Yes. A few things on their resume. Typos on resumes are definitely concerning. They make me feel like if you didn't put enough effort into your resume to make sure you didn't have typos, how much effort would you put into this job to make sure that all of your correspondence was very professional? And so definitely proofread. Have a friend also proofread your resumes. Make sure that they look good. Another big red flag for me are people who change jobs frequently. If I get a resume from someone and they change jobs every year or less, I automatically disqualify them. I'm looking for people who want to be in a position for at least a year or more, grow within a company, and look for more opportunities and aren't always just going to the next high payest, aren't always chasing the highest dollar. I'm looking for people that really invest and want to be in a specific career. So for me, people that change jobs a lot is definitely a red flag. Not having any questions to ask, like I said earlier, at the end of the interview is a red flag. Unprofessional atmosphere, whether I'm interviewing the person in person or virtually, I expect that that you dress nicer than what you think you would have to dress for the job, right? Like if in the job you would be wearing
one step further
casual, yes, wear a suit. I expect, the next level up. So wearing t-shirts to interviews, if your hair's a mess, like just try to look professional. And if it is a virtual interview, which I'm sure a lot of them would be nowadays, making sure that you have a nice clean backdrop is nice, good lighting. I interviewed someone one time and it was so dark, I could barely see their face. It was very awkward because I couldn't really see their mannerisms. I couldn't play off of their reactions. And that was kind of odd. I've also done an interview where somebody had the laptop in their lap and the whole interview was like, they were doing this.
Oh my gosh, you were getting seasick.
Yeah, it was very distracting. And so put your computer down, have it in a steady spot. I've also had an interview where someone's cat just crawled across the
Well,
street.
you could understand that one, right? I mean,
yes, I have dogs, but I put them out. Put your pets in another room, shut the door. They'll be okay for a little bit. You don't want to be distracted and you don't want the person that's interviewing you to be distracted, especially if you're applying for a position where you're going to be having virtual meetings or virtual webinars or meetings with clients virtually, because the person interviewing you is going to think, if they can't keep their cat out for a meeting with me, what are they going to be doing when they're meeting with our customers? So it's very important to have a very professional, quiet space during that time.
Especially like because your job is very client customer based. So
That's right.
so that's really important. Um, and I mean, it's important for all job interviews, I think, but especially if you're in a customer, realm, that hiring manager wants to know that what you're going to look like with someone important. And in this
Yes.
case, you are important. So if they're acting this way for you, then yeah, you could lose money. Seriously.
Yes. It's very concerning. It just makes you question how they would be with a customer, and maybe they would be fine, but you just don't know. And so it makes you look for those people who do look very professional and have a quiet space to do those interviews.
Okay, so um so this is not, I just thought of a question which is not in my list of questions that I asked you about, but so you can say no. But I was just thinking, I also got a lot of questions about the types of questions that people ask, and I didn't really know how to answer that because I feel like companies, a bunch of different companies, they all ask, they have very different styles of interviewing. Because I know when I was interviewed for my teaching job right now, that is much different than what it sounds like um, your interview process is like. So yeah, do you have any idea what kind of questions people generally get asked nowadays? Or yeah.
I think it's hard because it really depends on the role that you're applying for, because they're going to want to ask you some questions that are relevant to the role itself. Like we were talking about earlier, being prepared to speak to your experience and why you would be a good fit for that role. They might ask you to give them an example of a time when you were successful doing one of those things. That type of a question comes up a lot. Um, just generic questions that I think are very versatile for a lot of different fields and roles. Why are you interested in this position? Are you interested in working for, like, what drew you to this application? Like, why did you apply? Was it because you were interested in the role? Was it because you were interested in the company? What about the application like spoke to you? And so that's a question people ask a lot. Why do you want to leave your current job? You should always be prepared to answer that question,
Yeah.
especially if you've changed jobs a lot. People are going to ask, why do you keep changing jobs? They're trying to understand what you're looking
Yeah.
for and what you would be content with long term. They're concerned that you're going to want to leave their job after a short amount of time. Um, what are
Yeah.
your salary expectations for the position? That's a very generic question that you should expect to be asked and be ready to
Yeah,
answer.
that's on
Um,
my list.
yeah, I'm trying to think
Yeah.
of some other ones, but those are some things that I think are good questions to always be prepared for. And then anything, if you receive any type of like questionnaire ahead of time, a lot of these companies, they send you questionnaires or technical assessments to fill out before they interview you. Be prepared to talk about anything that's on those types of things too, because they're asking you those questions and then they're going to have follow-up questions for you in the interview to kind of see how you are on your feet. Make sure you weren't just Googling things when you were filling it out. And so be prepared to talk about anything that's on those as well. But it is really different. It depends on the role, the company, and also the hiring manager. There's people that do
Yeah.
similar jobs to what I do, and they ask different questions than what I ask. And so it's definitely a good idea to do a lot of interviewing so that you can get really good practice. And then when there's a job that you're really interested in, you'll do it really well and you'll already have been asked a wide range of questions and you'll feel much more comfortable answering. So definitely do a lot of interviewing, even if you're not sure if you're interested in the position, because it's great practice so that when you actually get that interview for that position that you really want, you're going to nail it.
Okay, perfect. And so what if they do ask that question? What are your salary requirements? How much money do you want to make? It's hard because yeah, a lot of people feel very desperate for jobs. So it's a hard question for them to ask. Do you ever ask your interviewees what their salary requirements are?
Yes, every time. I ask them every time. And what I really want, and I understand this is a difficult question, what I really want is for them to tell me the truth about what they want. But usually people will tell you what they want and also buffer it a little bit. And I actually recommend that you buffer it a little bit. So let's say you want to make $50,000. Say you want to make $55,000 because you do want to leave yourself some negotiation room, but you don't want to say, I want to make $70,000 if you want to make 50,000, because you're going to end up disqualifying yourself from a role that you might be a good fit for, because the interviewees aren't going to want to keep investing time into interviewing you if they don't think that you're ultimately going to take the position for what it pays. So be honest, but it's okay to buffer it a little bit and ask for a little bit more than what you would really settle for. That way you have a little bit of room for negotiation, but definitely be honest, because you don't want to waste their time. You don't want to waste your time going through 4 rounds of interviews just to get to the end and them say, well, we're willing to pay 50 and you want 70, and well, I can't settle for that much. And so it's really good to have an idea of what you're looking for. And if you are desperate, and if you are like, I'm in a position where I'll take, anything, then you can go a little bit lower, or you can go just meeting expectations, but definitely don't undercut yourself. Don't sell yourself short. Communicate what you feel like your value is and what your salary requirements are. And a lot of people really respect that, because most hiring managers, before they've even interviewed you, they already know a range for what I can offer for this position. Every time I interview someone, I know what the range is and what I'm able to offer. And it's usually like a $10,000 to $15,000 range. And I know if they say way over here or way below, then I'm like, okay, And so sometimes I'll just say, okay, this position, like at the most would only pay this much. Is that even something you would be interested in? If you're not, just no, I'm actually not interested in that. What other positions are available that you think I should apply for in your organization that better fit my salary requirements? Totally fine. We'd rather just know and have that conversation.
Yeah, so that process makes sense. I guess my question is, like, so all of my followers are from different countries, right? So they don't, um when you say come in and what is your, what are you worth, what is the price you want, that might be really hard for them, because they may not even have a great idea of what the salary range looks like. They may not have a great idea of the, I don't know, the like living wage in that area. They don't even know what it's like to live in the US, And so that question might be really hard for them. Do you think it's okay for them to say something like, I am willing to pay, kind of or be paid the general salary for this position? Like, not really answering the question, but say, I expect to be paid reasonably for the position that I'm applying for, instead of saying, oh, seven, because that could be a really hard question.
Yeah, I think that that's okay if you really just don't have that clarity. I also would encourage them before the interview to do some research. There's websites like Glassdoor where
Mhm.
you can go and you can see what people will post their salaries for positions that are similar in the US. And you can do a little bit of research to understand what might be a fair salary for that position ahead of time, so that you have a little bit more knowledge. That would be helpful. The other thing that you can do if you're
And
not
specifically,
sure,
sorry for interrupt, but specifically Glassdoor also shows you the region, right?
yes,
Because you really want to make sure you're not just looking at a broad pay, but specifically at the region of the United States that you're looking at, because it's going to be different depending on where
yes.
you live. Yeah.
Oh, yes, definitely. Really good point. Because if you're looking at the same job in New York City or the same job in Michigan, the pay is going to be very different because the cost of living is different. And so, looking at the region, looking at what other people are saying, and keep in mind, some of those people are going to have a little bit higher salaries because they've been doing the job for a little bit, but it will at least give you a ballpark of what the job should pay, so that you might have a good understanding of what to ask for or what to communicate. The other thing that you can do is jump the gun and ask them first, what is the salary range for this position? I love to ask that question. Anytime someone asks me, hey, are you interested in interviewing for this job? Maybe tell me more about the position. Okay, what's the salary range?
Yeah.
Go ahead and
Then
ask
it's just
them.
done. That
and
is
it's
pretty
done.
fun.
And
Yeah.
you can ask that when you're applying for the position. You can ask that to the first person that interviews you. It might be like an HR person or a recruiter. Ask that person. That way you're not even asking the hiring manager, hey, what's the hiring range for this position? And they'll know. There's always a range that they have in mind. And so that way you'll know, oh, this position pays 45 to 60. So I want to give myself some negotiation room, but I also don't have a lot of experience. So I'm going to come in and ask for 50 or whatever makes the most sense.
That's
That's it
what I
then.
would do.
Ask
That's
them
what I would
first.
do. Yeah. And I mean, of course, still do the research because you don't want people to not pay you as much as you should have.
Absolutely.
Um,
Still do the research, but that way you can just go into it. And then by the time you have the conversation, the hiring manager asks you, you'll already know.
yeah. I just have a couple more questions. So the other one that I get asked is, should I send a thank you note? When should I contact someone after an interview? Is it okay to contact them and say, hey, when am I going to hear from you?
Yes, definitely. I think it's good to try to ask during the interview if time allows towards the very end about next steps. When can I expect to hear back? And that way you're not kind of jumping the gun. Definitely. I love the idea of sending a thank you. I think within the first 24 hours or so after you've had the interview, sending a thank you note is really nice. Thanking them for interviewing you and for considering you for the position. Keep it brief though. Don't send them a whole paragraph explaining why you think you would be good for the position all over again. They're not going to read all of that. Keep it short and sweet. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Also, it's great if you can reference one thing that you learned in the interview that made you really excited about the job. Just something short like, wow, I really didn't know I would be able to work across with this other department. And I'm really interested in being able to collaborate with that type of role. Or
Oh,
I
that's a great
learned that this
idea.
company really values diversity, and that's really cool to me. And that was really awesome. Whatever, just something that you learned that made you even more excited about the position. Reference that. But again, just keep it short, keep it sweet. Thank you so much for your consideration. I look forward to hearing from you. And then leave it at that. Now, if they say, you know, you should expect to hear something from the end by the end of the week. It's totally fine. The following week, if you haven't heard anything, give them a little bit of a buffer, a day or two. Don't jump the
Mhm.
gun and say, oh my gosh, I haven't heard from you by 5 o'clock. Why haven't you reached out? Give them a second. But if they said, oh,
Everyone gets behind. Like,
yes, yes, everyone gets behind. So if they say, oh, you should hear something, by the end of the week, maybe reach out on Tuesday. Hey, I hadn't heard anything yet. I just want you to know I'm still very interested in the position. Can you please let me know what the next step would be? Totally fine.
yeah.
Remind them how interested you are in the position. Quick, brief follow up is important. And that's totally acceptable. But don't just continue to follow up and follow up and follow. If you
Yeah,
haven't
don't keep
anything,
contacting them all the time.
yes, because you never know what's going on with somebody. Something in the organization may have changed where now something else has taken away their time, and that is now their higher priority, and they haven't had a chance to get back to recruiting. It could be that something's going on with them personally, and if
They're
they come back
sick
to
with
it and
COVID.
they have 18 emails from you, they're just going to be annoyed.
Yeah.
So a couple, just short thank you and then one follow-up I think is sufficient, because you don't want to annoy them. That's the last thing that you want to do, but you do want to convey how interested you are. So I think that that's totally fine and good.
Right. If you don't hear from someone, um, and then you don't contact them at all when you don't hear, it's kind of like, okay, so why didn't they, I forgot something or to talk
Yeah.
to them. Why didn't they say anything? Do they really want this position? So just, yeah, I like that idea of just a quick reminder to say, hey,
Yeah.
I'm still here.
And
Thank you.
it lets them know that you haven't taken another position in the meantime, that you're still, interested. And so that is really helpful for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so my last question is, I know you don't have a lot of experience specifically hiring people who are international because a lot of my followers are people who are very interested in coming to the US to work and live, or to study and then work and live. And so they really want to know about, sponsorships and all that stuff. But do you have any advice for people who live outside of the US who are trying to get job interviews within the US?
Yeah, I don't, like you said, I don't have a ton of experience interviewing people internationally. I don't know a lot about what sponsorships and things like that are available, but I do know that the larger companies in the US, especially like large tech or biopharma companies, they tend to hire more internationally than small companies do. They have the means
And
and the
that
resources.
what did you say? Biopharmaceuticals, right?
Yeah, some of
Biopharmaceuticals.
those larger companies, they tend to be much more um, open to hiring internationally, and they tend to also hire faster and have a lot more
Okay.
positions available. And so companies that have a lot of positions available are much more likely to open it up to international students or people in other areas. And so that is definitely going to be where you would want to focus your efforts, I would think, would be on some of the larger companies that have multiple positions available. Definitely would be a good place to go.
Yeah.
At my organization, we've hired a few people who have come over internationally, but not very many. And I haven't hired any specifically on my team,
Mhm.
because a lot of the smaller companies, they're looking for people that are already really close, they're already really local, so that they can kind of have that local business, atmosphere. And if they can't find someone, then they might open it up. But typically with the job market, they can find someone. So I would definitely recommend looking at larger companies that have multiple positions available, because those positions are going to be much more accessible to someone international.
Yeah. So, and the other thing is, if I mean, again, I don't know a whole lot about this, but if you get a job in a larger company and you're able to, get a visa and move here, then after that, you might have more luck. If you want to work at a smaller place, kind of
Yes.
transitioning from a big place to a small place will be a little bit easier, don't you think?
Yes, yes, definitely. And be open to where you want to work too. If you are really interested in working in the United States, a lot of those larger companies are open to, transferring you to a different office. So if you start out and maybe in a
Yeah.
place that doesn't excite you that much, you work there for maybe a year, you're much more likely for that company to be willing to transfer you to another location that they have in the US that might be an area that you'd rather live in, versus just applying straight to that position that everybody wants. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of those companies too. If they open a new office in a new area, they will pay you people to move to those offices. If you've already been working for the company, they'll pay your moving services, they'll pay you like thousands of dollars just to move to another location. So those larger companies have a lot more options available for that too. So just because you take a position in a certain location, it doesn't mean you're going to be there forever, but definitely don't take it if you don't think you would be comfortable being there for at least a year, and learning the job and
Right.
being able to prove yourself before those opportunities are available.
Yeah, that's great advice. Oh my gosh, I feel like you had so much great advice for people. I'm trying to look at my list and make sure went through everything. Um, yeah, I think I went. Is there anything else you that you're thinking of that it's like, oh, this is really important that I missed?
I don't think so. Good luck. It's hard, interviewing is hard. And like I said earlier,
Interviewing.
you're going to have some bad interviews. You're going to leave a few interviews and just be like, oh, I don't think that went very well, or I don't think I answered that very well. That's all part of the process. You're going to learn how to be a better person you're going to be learn how to be a better interviewee, and you're going to be so much better at it if you just continue to make yourself apply and put yourself in that position. And then when the job comes around that you're really interested in, you'll be ready. So I would just encourage everyone to keep practicing, because you do get better at it the more
Yeah.
that you do it. And you'll find other people ask different questions. So you'll get to learn how to respond to different things. And it will be a very great experience for you to just always be doing a few interviews if you can, so that you can get really good at it. And that's going to help you to get that job that you really want.
I love that advice. Yeah, even if you don't do well at an interview, just think, oh, it's like
I
It's
learned something.
yeah, think about what you learned and use it to get better next time. That's
Yes,
great.
think about, oh, what should I have said to that question? Okay, let me write that down. I'm going to be ready next time someone asks me that question.
Yeah.
Think about it in a very
Exactly.
positive light. We all fail at interviews sometimes. We all have interviews where we're like, oh, I didn't get the job. I didn't do well. Learn from it. Keep practicing. You'll get better and you'll get the job that you really want.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Courtney,
You're
for
so
joining
welcome.
me.